From the first second in Deltarune, we are connected to a mysterious man in a strange, pulsating void. This individual offers us the rare opportunity to create our own vessel for usage in his world. He guides us through this process step by step, and once our creation is completed,
or cut off, till no one chooses who they are in this world, and forced into the body of a non-binary troubled teenager on a school day.
For almost a decade, we have remained completely in the dark on what's going on in this scene and why it happens. Sure, it's to set up the expectation that our choices won't matter in Deltarune, but why did the character behind this act do this to us? Why did W.D. Gaster create such an elaborate ruse? I'm Don, and I'm joined by Dan as always, and we are Danger After Dawn. This is the finale of the Frozen Fate theory. In the first video, we discussed how Carol has been working in the shadows to plan out not only the main story, but also the weird route as a plan B. Her goal is to give Noelle the power to decide Deltarune's ending by any means necessary.
You should definitely watch that video before this one, and we even have a spin-off theory following the same plot threads.
Yeah, go watch it, or most of this is gonna sound like nonsense. Also, like and subscribe while you do that, please.
We ended off the last one by saying that Carol definitely isn't working alone to do all of this insane stuff. From the very beginning, she's been working with Gaster. In this video, we're going to explain why we think that, as well as speculate deeply on Gaster's motivation, goals, and character. So let's get back into the scene that opened with Deltarune.
Inside the Goner Maker. We're just gonna ignore the Goner making part because it's all part of a ruse anyways. We are connected to Deltarune and injected into Chris's soul. Now the big question here that everyone's been asking is if this was intentional, and if there are multiple people talking in the Goner Maker. Now, me personally, I didn't used to think that anyone other than Gaster was talking here, but after getting so many chapters, I feel like the person who cuts in at the end to tell us we are Chris probably is someone else.
We already see that this person's text is different from the person we've been talking to. And while for a long time this could have been seen as a stylistic choice, Gaster has continuously used the same Goner Maker text style every other time he has spoken. So this one instance of it being different seems incredibly odd if it's meant to still be him. Before chapter 4, we didn't have a strong candidate for who this could be. Friend was the best guess. But now we have someone who is familiar with Chris, has a fascination for heart-shaped objects, and knows about the nature of Chris's soul. Carol Holiday. If that's somehow a surprise. Her planning requires Chris to open and close dark worlds in almost every chapter to set up for the Roaring Nights. As we have said before, if she intends the weird route to be a plan B, then she needs the player's involvement too.
So now we're down to just one question. Did Carol intercept the Gaster, or was it all part of Gaster's plan? Given the title of this video, we believe these two struck some kind of deal. Carol isn't interrupting the Goner Maker. Gaster is basically giving her the perfect layup to pull the rug on us. There was no intention of ever giving us a custom vessel. We were always going to be put inside Chris so these two could get what they want out of us. Because Gaster is a scientist and this is an experiment. The subject of which we will get to in a bit, but let's keep our focus on Carol. Sure, Gaster gets to interact with the player, someone clearly very fascinating to him, but what does Carol get out of working alongside him?
Carol wants information about the prophecy, about dark worlds, and about Deltarune itself. In Chapter 5, Rudy says Carol went south of town to investigate for a while, which likely means she might be trying to pry a bit more information out of Gaster. With this information, she can also use her influence and powers to set up this complicated plan we've been talking about. And for Gaster, she offers Chris, a guilty family friend who made a promise a long time ago.
All that's nice and all, but do we really have any proof Gaster is involved in Carol's Deltarune plans beyond Chris and the Goner Maker? I'll be honest, not really. I mean, there's a bunch of Goner-like people in Hometown, but none of them seem to have anything to do with Carol's work. And our best piece of evidence is actually very new. In Chapter 5's Weird Route, the file for the song that plays during the festival is called Happy Town, and this song name is shared with a song from Undertale's hidden sound test room, which includes Gaster's greatest hits such as Meat Factory, Trouble Dingle, and of course Gaster's theme. So this directly ties the Weird Route to Gaster in a rather obtuse and not very clear way. Great. Being real, the actually tangible evidence kind of just ends there, but the questions surrounding the peculiarities with the Goner Maker and Chris really don't have any answer at all without Carol. So I think for where we are in the game, it's a pretty good answer until we get more info on what Carol's actually doing. However, what we're going to talk about for the rest of the video might strengthen this connection in its own way. Gaster is not just in on this plan for funsies or because he likes Carol. In fact, we think even Carol is just another part of his experiment. All of this is to prove one singular point.
Have you ever thought about a world where everything is exactly the same, except you don't exist? Everything functions perfectly without you. The thought terrifies me. Who actually is W.D. Gaster? Why do we care so much about him? Gaster is stated by his followers to have been the original royal scientist in Undertale before Alphys. Using his incredible genius, he created the core, a magical energy source for all of the underground. How unfortunate, though, that Gaster would eventually fall into his own creation and be lost across space and time, never to be seen or remembered again. Save for incredibly rare circumstances, Gaster is never mentioned or encountered substantially in Undertale. No major monster utters his name, the core lingers, but save for a single Goner, no one mentions he made it. Gaster has been forgotten. The world move on like he didn't even exist.
Dark, darker, and yet darker still, Gaster sunk into darkness, and whatever he found within it fascinated him deeply. And now he lords over Deltarune. I don't think Gaster made Deltarune himself, based on things like the police tape cutting off Hometown's only exit, the internet being out, and strange dialogue throughout the game about an old world being altered. It seems that Gaster somehow got a hold of Deltarune, and by either using Carol's mayoral authority or his own crazy world-altering devices, he has boxed in Hometown to be a controlled environment for experimentation. I think that, like every other character, Gaster is seeking a certain outcome out of Deltarune. That's why he says, "How much longer now, my Deltarune?" He's asking that because he isn't making it himself, but rather he's waiting for it to end. You see, we believe Gaster found comfort and relatability in the Dark Worlds. The worlds where objects come to life, where adventures can be had any day and cakes can heal any wound. But when the lights come back on, all of it is gone.
Objects get forgotten. objects get replaced. Objects will be left behind as the world marches forward. Gaster sees himself in the darkness, and he wants to validate his own existence. The Fun Gang, Des, Asgore, Carol, all of them have been touched and changed by the Dark Worlds as they spread. But to Gaster, it's all an illusion. Because when every fountain is closed, when the night's shadow is brought to light, when Deltarune is no longer waiting, there will be nothing. The light world will move on from the dark. Our world will move on from Deltarune. All of it will be forgotten with time. This is Gaster's goal, to validate his own existence by proving all things are forgotten and replaced with time. To prove that all that matters is the end.
In order to better understand how we think this works within Deltarune's story, we need to analyze Gaster's subjects. Let's start with the Fun Gang.
Rouse is the easiest character to slot into our idea that Gaster is trying to prove that the end result is more valuable than anything else. From the very start, Rouse has shaped every action he's taken as a response to how Deltarune's prophecy ends. He encourages Chris and Susie to be nice to Darkners because he believes that the prophecy might change through kindness. Despite that, he turns out to be quite dismissive of how Darkners feel, including himself.
I'm sure no one has forgotten Rouse's heartbreaking speech about how Tanner should just accept his position as an obsolete object of the past, or Rouse's own self-deprecation. He himself says that many of the things he does, from baking to singing, are all just to make Chris and Susie happy, all to achieve an end result. None of it is for himself. But as Susie urges him to accept himself as his own person, he begins to realize that there are things he actually likes for himself. Though Rouse still has a hard time truly allowing his voice to be heard. He is getting close though, as his outbursts at Flowery show that he has thoughts he wants to express. Even then, he still dances around his knowledge of Chris's sketchy alliances in the bath scene at the Flower Castle. Rouse is definitely afraid of the prophecy's ending, and it keeps him from making stronger connections than he should be making. He slots into Gaster's experiment perfectly as a sort of controlled variable, someone who knows almost everything but will never go further than he should out of fear of shattering the fragile walls of his world.
Up next is our player character, Chris, who we have already talked about a lot in the series, but we think that the through line into Gaster's experiment with them is obvious as well. Everything Chris has done so far, no matter who you think is bossing them around, has been a means to an end. Someone, who we believe to be Carol, of course, is pressuring them into venturing into Dark Worlds via a promise they made a long time ago. Every Dark World they explore isn't really much more than a distraction. TV World is explicitly stated to be a distraction, as Chris told Tena to keep everyone occupied with fun games until the Roaring Night arrived. While they have been shown to genuinely care about Susie, Rouse, Noelle, Birdie, and the others, they have also been shown to carry a clear bit of guilt. Take the lake scene from Chapter 4, where Chris stares at Susie, struggling to avoid telling her everything they've done. In Chapter 5, too, they have plenty of odd interactions with Susie. It's clear they don't really like third wheeling between her and Noelle. And when Susie asks them about how they'd show love, they don't answer. Chris honestly probably feels really guilty for even liking Susie in the first place. Cause they know one day she'll learn their entire friendship is founded on lies. Everything Chris has done has all been to achieve a goal with Carol and the Knights. they've perfectly fallen into place.
And now we've reached the girl with hope crossed on her heart, Susie. This girl has pretty much completely immersed herself in the Dark Worlds, and for the most part, they have changed her for the better.
Susie started off brash and abrasive, but quickly grew into a headstrong and kind friend to all Darkners. She definitely values the Dark Worlds and their denizens the most out of anyone in the cast. So much so that she considers Castletown her home after only a few days.
However, as we just said, all of this is founded on a ruse. Chris's Dark Worlds are all a means to an end, and most of the stresses in Susie's life right now are pretty much directly caused by being part of the fun gang. Both Chris and Rouse know way more than she does about what's really happening behind the scenes of these Dark Worlds, and I have to imagine once she learns the truth about Chris, things aren't going to be pretty. This is where her role in the experiment comes in. Susie is the very person who said our choices don't matter at the start of Deltarune, a half-hearted statement at best, but for her it might be true. She keeps trying to pursue the Knight to stop their plan, but as long as Chris works with them, as long as Rouse keeps that information to himself, nothing she does will be good enough. And when she finally learns that, how will she react? Will anything she did in those Dark Worlds matter to her after that point? You have to remember, it's only been days for Susie. She could very easily regress into her old habits if something like this happens.
That's enough about the fun game. What about the person we made this entire theory series about in the first place? The one we've accused of making a deal with the devil. Carol Holiday is potentially Gaster's most interesting subject, aside from the player. We talked about her extensively already, but within the game, she is outright stated to be an incredibly preservative, powerful, and manipulative person. In these last couple of videos, we've thought outside the box to paint her as a desperate individual who is willing to put everything on the line for the sake of her daughter's happiness in the end, as a parallel with Queen's role in Chapter 2. The person who has shaped nearly every conflict in Deltarune so far through her careful planning since the day December disappeared. The kind of person who will throw everything away for a singular objective. If that kind of person came to make a deal with Gaster, how in the world could he possibly refuse?
Carol is trying so hard to avert another tragedy in her already tragic life. When she sees that everything she set up in both the weird route and the normal route ultimately fail despite Gaster's help, he will be totally destroyed.
Like, the situation here could not be more perfect. I know we're stacking speculation on speculation, but doesn't it all fit so well? 4 major characters so far fit neatly into this framework around Gaster's motivation. But to be honest, we haven't really talked much about Gaster's character. We should get back to that.
Despite his few words and his few emotions beyond pure scientific intrigue, there is one thing and person Gaster has expressed negative feelings towards. It's an egg. It's not too important, but not too unimportant.
The Forgotten Man has been in every chapter of Deltarune so far, making his final showing in Chapter 5. At least we assume it's the final time we see him. But he's such an interesting hidden character, and he easily manages to capture the fascination of the fandom just as much as Gaster. But seriously, what's Gaster's issue with this guy? All he does is sit around behind trees and gives out eggs. It just doesn't make any sense. Of all people, why is he an issue?
So, to talk about that, we need to talk about why anyone even thinks Gaster has an issue with the Forgotten Man. This comes from the PlayStation trophies, which apparently are only included in Deltarune because the PlayStation Store requires games to have them. There is an achievement for each chapter titled Complete Without Issue, and the only way to not get this achievement and get an issue is by getting an egg in the given chapter, which means, you don't get the trophy. And this is extremely bizarre. We'll talk about why this is significant in a minute, but I think it's important to discuss how the story is being told here. This is info that is exclusive to the PlayStation version of Deltarune. So theoretically, there is no way to know Gaster and the Forgotten Man have an adverse relationship without playing this version of the game. This is a plot point, and if it actually means something, why is it not portrayed in every version of the game? Well, this is some deep analysis on how Toby Fox is trying to tell these stories, but I think we could compare something like this to the Spampton sweepstakes. That event continuously has provided special information and new lore that wasn't, and in some cases still isn't, in Deltarune. However, it's clear that the sweepstakes is mostly meant to be teasers. Most things in the sweepstakes have been mentioned in the game, such as various songs, certain rooms, and stuff like Noelle's blog and her titular cheesy points. Spampton Sweepstakes isn't really giving us exclusive information that we need to solve this game like Five Nights at Freddy's. It's just a bunch of teasers for things that will be significant later in Deltarune. And I think this PlayStation trophy thing is a case of Toby taking advantage of something that he was forced to do in order to have a unique opportunity to portray a story element that will appear later. It'd be like how in Undertale we meet Flowey and we learn a tiny bit about Azrael, but until the last parts of the game, there's really no reason to even think that they're the same person, and like everything we know could easily be recontextualized by an end game reveal. So again, we're going to elaborate on why the Forgotten Man and Gaster's relationship is important, like right now, so just keep that in mind. We're going to talk about it now, so keep it in mind.
We believe that the Forgotten Man and Gaster are fundamentally opposed in their lines of thinking, despite both being forgotten people who don't matter much to the main story of their respective games. Before we get too deep into the weeds of this topic, this is actually portrayed in a very simple manner, in-game, right now. Both Gaster and the Forgotten Man talk about Deltarune, the game, and how long it will take for Deltarune to be completed. Here's what they both have to say.
Whether 11 hours or 11 years, Deltarune will be waiting. So take your time, wash your face, and get dressed. The halfway mark has been attained, but it is still waiting. How much longer now, my Deltarune?
We can clearly see here that the Forgotten Man is patient. He wants us to take our time with Deltarune because no matter how long it takes, Deltarune will always be waiting for us. In stark contrast, Gaster is literally counting the days down till Deltarune is over. Despite us being halfway done, he still brings up the fact that Deltarune is still waiting for us. He even asked, how much longer will it take for Deltarune to be over so he can get his results?
Gaster's impatience is also shown to us in the Roaring Night fight. When you lose to the Knight, Gaster straight up says, let us hasten. And he skips the whole Tenna fight in the Night intro cutscene to get right to the good stuff.
All Gaster cares about is the end. But the Forgotten Man, in all his appearances, asks us to take our time in his own weird ways.
Think back to the egg room in chapter 4, in which Chris enters this strange reverse art therapy session where they have to draw on a canvas with a pencil. Once they're finished and they try to wash their hands, graphite remains, and no matter what, they can never wash it all away. What I believe this is saying is that our past and our experiences, no matter how hard we try to move away from them, will always stick with us, even if it's just in the corner of our mind.
Wow! Based on everything we have said, that sounds extremely anti-Gaster.
What a weird coincidence. Well, in any case, we talked about Gaster's profession. Why don't we talk about the Forgotten Man's profession? Like, who actually is this guy? I'll answer myself. Even though all his major appearances are in Dark Worlds, the Forgotten Man is an actual person in the Light World too. If you've collected eggs, he will appear in certain areas in the Light World, usually only seen through windows, so you don't actually know what he looks like. If you talk to an organic, that leads you to Chapter 4 Egg Room if you missed it. The organic will ask Chris if they missed something on the other side of their mind. Every egg room also exclusively features Chris, without Susie nor Rouse. The Forgotten Man is someone from Chris's past that they have tucked away and forgotten many times.
No one in Hometown ever mentions this guy either. So it's safe to say he's pretty much forgotten in the grand scheme of Deltarune as well. The leading theory about the Forgotten Man is that they used to be Chris's therapist, likely following traumatic events from their childhood, which there seemed to have been a lot of. This is believed mostly because of the Forgotten Man ask a lot of questions in the third egg room, and because Chris is literally in art therapy in the fourth one. Now, but bear with me here. But if Gaster is a kind of mad scientist with no regard for what happens to subjects, is that not like the opposite of a therapist? A therapist exists to understand people, help someone work through their personal problems through rigorous exploration of said person's past and behavior. These two are kind of opposites in every sense, and yet
They are so similar. Both of them are largely irrelevant to the game they're supposed to be from. Both of them are sparsely seen, and both require going between two rooms to find a secret hidden room in the middle in order to find them.
almost every character in Undertale has a counterpart in Deltarune. Asgore, Toriel, Alphys, Undyne, Metaton, Mad Mew Mew, basically everyone. And Gaster does too. Because the Forgotten Man is Deltarune Gaster. A literal another him.
I know what you're thinking. We literally just saw the Forgotten Man for probably the final time. If he's Deltarune Gaster, then why wouldn't we know already? Again, Toby Fox, based on the one game of his that I've played, likes recontextualizing old information with big late-game reveals. I think his intention here, if this is true, is that we will meet Gaster by making the same comparisons we made here, but with explicit in-game text. It will be obvious that the Forgotten Man was an alternate Gaster the whole time. The Forgotten Man is not an important character in the grand scheme of Deltarune, and he's okay with that. He only wants to make his mark on one person, Chris. Frankly, in the Light World, he doesn't seem to be bothered at all either way. And that angers Gaster. He has made his entire mission now to validate his own misery. That working so hard, fighting so much, just to lose everything in the end and be forgotten is something that will destroy anyone. He wants to prove that no one could ever value the road to get there if that's what lies ahead. But the Forgotten Man refutes this by biding his time, being patient, and believing that there's no shame in being forgotten or remembering the journey.
And all of this is said with a single object, the egg.
Gaster wants one of a few things to happen to you. He either wants you to play through Deltarune to the end once and move on, or for you to play Deltarune, see its ending, and think you can change it. Maybe try another route, like the weird route. Maybe grab the twisted sword or just use the pure crystal. He wants you to do all of that. Then get to each of their endings and realize, despite a few variances, maybe a few new fights, that they're all the same. No matter what, it ended with the same tragedy. This is the biggest win for Gaster. If you sit down and think, oh, so nothing I did mattered after that final playthrough, then Gaster wins. He was right. There's nothing more important than the
What is in an egg? Who is it for? What is it for? Why is it evidence? That silly little block of text in the corner of Blue and Yellow's mini-boss fight. You'll know what it's evidence for when it happens. This doesn't happen in the fight. Nothing calls for the egg. But something will happen, and that something is meeting Gaster. Because the eggs prove him wrong. They prove that the Dark Worlds, the people we meet, everything we did mattered.
every person you spared,
Every Jackenstein that fell,
every lively castle town,
every frozen face,
every minute Deltarune was waiting for us.
every desperate grasp for air when it's all over.
All of it mattered.
'Cause it happened, no matter how it ends. Even if we forget eventually, it all did happen. And we can never, ever wash it all away. You might forget it 11 times, or 1100 times. But Deltarune is always waiting, in the back of your mind.
And that's why Deltarune's Frozen Fate, a world where Carol and Gaster find success, will never come to pass.